Good morning, dears. I hope all of you have watched that movie, Ran. It is a bit lengthy movie, but of course worth watching. Uh, and as I told you, it is an adaptation of Shakespeare's King Lear. Hope you understood it, but again with a lot of changes. It is not exactly a recreation of Shakespeare. You cannot say it, but of course the storyline, the plot, many instances, everything is inspired from that Shakespearean tragedy. Now, so today we'll discuss uh, the movie. Now, before moving on to the movie, you need to have a clear idea of who the director is, because there are different ways in which we can analyze a movie, uh, just like literature. For example, we have these canonical writers like Shakespeare, Wordsworth, Coleridge, Hemingway, then Faulkner, all these writers. And at a time when the writer becomes established, uh, he is mostly known for that stylistic those stylistic features that his works produce. All this become the label uh, through which we understand his work. For example, if we go through a few of Shakespeare's works, we can connect these works based on a peculiar style that Shakespeare adopts in his writings. Similarly, if we look at the poetry of Wordsworth, if we analyze the style of Wordsworth, we understand that there is something that is linking all these works, and that is what you call the style of a writer. Just like that, a filmmaker or a director, he will also possess certain a style of its own. Style, as you say, that style is the index of personality. എന്ന് പറയുന്ന പോലെ നമുക്ക് ഒരു ഡയറക്ടറിൻ്റെ ഒരു ശൈലി, അയാളുടെ പല പല സിനിമകൾ കാണുമ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് ആ ഡയറക്ടറിൻ്റെ ആ ഒരു സ്റ്റൈൽ ഓഫ് ഡിറക്ഷൻ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അയാളുടെ ഒരു ഫിലിംസിൻ്റെ ഒരു തീമാകാം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു സിനിമാറ്റോഗ്രഫി ആകാം. ഇതിലൊക്കെ ഒരു കണക്ഷൻ കാണും. എല്ലാ സിനിമകളിലും ഒരു കണക്റ്റിംഗ് ത്രെഡ് കാണും. അപ്പം നമ്മൾ കുറസോവയുടെ ഫിലിംസ്, അതായത് കുറസോവയുടെ ഫിലിമാണ് റാൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ റാൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സിനിമയെക്കാട്ടിലും ഒരു പക്ഷേ വേൾഡ് സിനിമയെ തന്നെ ഏറ്റവും അധികം വിസ്മയിപ്പിച്ച ഒരു ഫിലിം ഡയറക്ടറാണ്, ഒരു ജാപ്പനീസ് ഫിലിം മേക്കറാണ് അക്കീറ കുറസോവ. സോ ബിഫോർ മൂവിങ് ഓൺ ടു എ ഡിസ്കഷൻ ഓഫ് റാൻ, you need to have a clear cut idea of who this man is, Kurosawa. At least I think some of you at least might have um, come across this name Kurosawa, because he's such an established master craftsman in the field of cinema. നിങ്ങൾ ആരെങ്കിലുമൊക്കെ കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടാവും, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ചിലപ്പോൾ കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ടാവും, കുറസോവയുടെ സിനിമകൾ കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ടാവും. എനിവേ, വിൽ ഹാവ് അറ്റ് ഫസ്റ്റ് എ ക്വിക്ക് ലുക്ക് അറ്റ് who is Kurosawa and what is the speciality of his films, and after that we'll move on to Ran. Okay, I hope all of you have seen the film Ran. കാരണം നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ ഈ ഓരോ കാര്യങ്ങൾ പറയുമ്പോൾ you should have already seen that film. എങ്കിൽ മാത്രമേ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് അതുമായിട്ട് കുറേ കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഐഡൻറ്റിഫൈ ചെയ്യാനൊക്കെ പറ്റത്തുള്ളൂ. സോ വൺസ് അഗൈൻ ഐ എം ടെല്ലിങ് യു, ഇഫ് യു ഹാവ് നോട്ട് seen it, please see it before listening to these audios. Okay, so now let's see who is Kurosawa. Now, Akira Kurosawa, he was born in 1910, and he died in 1998. And he was a Japanese filmmaker and painter, and he has directed over 30 films, 30 films in a career spanning 57 years. And as I said, he is regarded as one of the most important and influential filmmakers in the history of cinema. Now, when you look at his family, we see that he was born in the district of Tokyo in Japan, and his father, Isamu, his father was a member of the samurai family, and he also worked as an army officer and a teacher in the army school. Okay, and his mother was Shima, Shima. She was from a very well known merchant family in Tokyo. And Kurosawa was the eighth and youngest child of that family. Now, right from his childhood, his father was so particular that his children uh, go through physical exercise, fitness, etc. And he also encouraged them to watch films. In his biography, it is stated that he started watching films from the age of 6. Now, another important instance that he states in his biographies is that he watched the great Kanto earthquake, which happened in Japan in 1923, and his brother took Akira. Akira was then 13 years old, and he took Akira to view that devastation. And and he directly saw that corpses, dead bodies, and all those crumbled buildings, and people wailing and everything. So right from childhood he was exposed to the horrors of life, such devastation, death, etc. And it is said that he even participated in removing all those. He was a child, just 13 years old, but even then he was daring enough to help people clear out all those dead bodies and everything. So, in a way, he states that this incident influenced his later artistic career, because in his films you see that he was always open to showing the horrors of life, like death, devastation, everything. All these find a very important place in his works. Another interesting thing is that before entering the world of filmmaking, Kurosawa dreamed of the life of a painter. He was a very talented painter. He had aspirations of being a painter throughout his youth. Uh, And then we see that when he moved to filmmaking, he brought the talents and techniques of a painter in him to his filmmaking. And that is why you see that he has a phenomenal eye for framing remarkable shots. And many film critics say that his visual power is nearly unmatched. And it was actually in 1935. There was a film studio in Japan. Now it is known as the Toho Company Limited. Toho, Toho Company Limited. But then earlier it was known as the Photochemical Laboratories, or PCL, Photochemical Laboratories. And in 1935 they had advertised for assistant directors, and Kurosawa submitted his application and he got entry. He was appointed as assistant director to a major Japanese director of that time. His name was Kajiro Yamamoto, Kajiro Yamamoto, Kajiro Yamamoto. He was a Japanese filmmaker, screenwriter, and even an actor. And he was very famous for comedies as well as war films. And Yamamoto became the mentor of Kurosawa. He was very interested and he could understand that this boy was so talented, and so he inspired him, and he just groomed Kurosawa into becoming a great director. And we see that until 1943, Kurosawa was working mainly as an assistant to Yamamoto Kajiro. And it was in 1943 that Kurosawa was promoted to a director. And he made his first feature film, Sanshiro Sugada, and it was the story of Japanese judo masters, and it was a huge success. And then in 1944, he came up with his second film, which was called in Japanese as Ichiban Utsukushiku, and it was translated as the most beautiful. And it was a story about girls at work in a military scenario. And immediately he married the actress who had played the leading part in that picture. Her name was Yaguchi Yoko, and in that he has two children, a son and a daughter. And then in uh, 1946, he came up with uh, a film which portrays the history of Japanese militarism. And it was named No Regrets for Our Youth. That was the English translated name of the 1946 film, No Regrets for Our Youth. And it portrays the history of Japanese militarism. And in fact, of the many post war films that Kurosawa has shot, this was the most successful both artistically and commercially. And then in 1948, he came up with Drunken Angel. That was the film that made Kurosawa famous as a director. And it was based on the story of a consumptive gangster and a drunken doctor living in the post war desolation of downtown Tokyo. And it is a melodrama which intermingles desperation, hope, violence, melancholy, etc. And another speciality of this film was that the gangster was portrayed by a new actor in that film, The Drunken Angel. The protagonist, I mean, the hero character, was done by a new actor, and his name was Mifune Toshiro. Mifune Toshiro, Toshiro, and he later became a star through this film, and he subsequently appeared in most of Kurosawa's film. In fact, you can see him in almost 15 of the films. You find this actor, Mifune Toshiro. And then another very eventful um thing that should be mentioned is Kurosawa's Rashomon, and hope you all have seen it because that was prescribed in your degree syllabus. So Kurosawa's Rashomon, that was shown at the Venice Film Festival in 1951, and it was awarded the Grand Prix. It also won the Oscar for the best foreign language film, and in fact this was the first time a Japanese film had won such high international acclaim. And after that, Japanese films started attracting serious attention all over the world. And then, see, all biographical sources as well as uh, comments by other filmmakers or co actors or the crew. All this indicate that Kurosawa was a completely hands-on director because he was passionately involved in every aspect of the filmmaking process. And in fact, one interviewer had once summarized that he writes his scripts, he oversees the design, he rehearses the actors, he sets up all the shots, and then does the editing as well. And in fact, his active participation extended from the initial concept to the editing and scoring of the final product. So he was an what do you call, a hands-on director or an all-rounder, because he was involved in every aspect of filmmaking. Then another interesting thing to be noted about Kurosawa as a director was that he emphasized uh, uh, every time that screenplay, I mean, the plot, the storyline, that was the absolute foundation of a successful film. And it is said that in addition to the actual script, Kurosawa, he used to produce extensive and fantastically detailed notes to elaborate his vision. For example, അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ സെവൻ സമുറായി എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് ഒരു സിനിമയുണ്ട്, വളരെ ഫേമസ്. അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ സമുറായി ഫിലിംസിൽ തന്നെ ഏറ്റവും ഫേമസ്, ഏറ്റവും ടോപ്പ് ലിസ്റ്റിൽ വരുന്ന ഫിലിമാണ് സെവൻ സമുറായി. അതിൽ തന്നെ ഈ സെവൻ സമുറായിലെ ഈ ഓരോ സമുറായിയെയും കുറിച്ച് അവരുടെ ഒരു ഡീറ്റെയിൽഡ് ബയോഗ്രഫി തന്നെ അദ്ദേഹം പ്രിപ്പയർ ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു എന്നാണ് പറയുന്നത്. ആൻഡ് ഹി ഹാഡ് 6 നോട്ട് ബുക്സ് വിച്ച് ഡീറ്റെയിൽഡ് ദി even the minutest details about these characters, like what they wore, what they ate, how they walked, how they talked, how they behaved and greeted, and how they tied their shoes. അങ്ങനെ വളരെ ഡീറ്റെയിൽ ആയിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ പോലും അദ്ദേഹം കുറിച്ച് വെക്കാറുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ഓരോ ക്യാരക്ടറിനെ കുറിച്ച് അത്രയും കൃത്യമായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു നോട്ട് അദ്ദേഹം തയ്യാറാക്കിയിരുന്നു എന്നാണ് പറയുന്നത്. ആൻഡ് അതേപോലെ തന്നെ അതിനകത്ത് ഒരു 101 പെസൻറ്റ് ക്യാരക്ടേഴ്സിനെ അതിനകത്ത് കാണിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. അപ്പം ഈ പെസൻറ്റ് ക്യാരക്ടേഴ്സിനെ കുറിച്ചും അദ്ദേഹം ഡീറ്റെയിൽ ആയിട്ട്, അതായത് ഒരു മൈന്യൂട്ട് റോൾ ചെയ്യുന്ന ക്യാരക്ടറാണെങ്കിൽ പോലും, ഒരു മൈനർ റോൾ ചെയ്യുന്ന ക്യാരക്ടറാണെങ്കിൽ പോലും അവരുടെ എല്ലാ കാര്യങ്ങളും, അവരുടെ കോസ്റ്റ്യൂം, അവരുടെ എല്ലാ കാര്യങ്ങളും, ഡീറ്റെയിൽ ആയിട്ടുള്ള എല്ലാ കാര്യങ്ങളും അദ്ദേഹം അത്രയധികം ശ്രദ്ധ കൊടുത്തിരുന്ന ഒരു ഡയറക്ടറാണ് എന്നുള്ളതാണ് പറയുന്നത്. ഓക്കെ, അതുപോലെ there are several instances which show his dedication to the art. Like for example, there's an interesting incident during the shooting of Throne of Blood. Throne of Blood is an adaptation of Macbeth, and that was in that the protagonist, the hero character, was done by Mifune Toshiro. And there was a scene in which he was attacked with arrows by some people, and Kurosawa had archers shoot real arrows, and Toshiro Mifune had a difficult time. He himself had stated in one of his interviews that some of the arrows missed him by an inch, and the actor was so terrified in the film and he suffered nightmares afterward എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ട്. അതേപോലെ ഇദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ the way they recreated many sets, that was also incredible. For example, അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ ഒരു റെഡ് ബിയേർഡ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് ഒരു സിനിമയുണ്ട്. അതിനകത്ത് in order to construct the gate for a clinic, അതൊരു ഓൾഡ് ബിൽഡിംഗ് ആയിട്ട് സെറ്റ് ചെയ്യാനാണ്. അപ്പോൾ അവരെന്താ ചെയ്തതെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ, കുറോസാവ ഹാഡ് ഹിസ് അസിസ്റ്റൻസ്, ദേ ഡിസ്മാൻറ്റിൽഡ് റോട്ടൻ വുഡ് ഫ്രം ഓൾഡ് സെറ്റ്, ഓക്കെ, ആൻഡ് ദെൻ ദേ ക്രിയേറ്റഡ് ദ പ്രോപ്പ് ഫ്രം സ്ക്രാച്ച് വിത്ത് ദിസ് ഓൾഡ് വുഡ്. ഈ പഴയ തടി വെച്ചിട്ട് അവർ ആ സെറ്റ്, ആ ഗേറ്റ് ക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്തു. സോ ദാറ്റ് ദ ഗേറ്റ് ലുക്ഡ് പ്രോപ്പർലി റാവേജ്ഡ് ബൈ ടൈം. ഓക്കെ, ആൻഡ് അതേപോലെ തന്നെ നമ്മൾ ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്യാൻ പോകുന്ന റാൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സിനിമ, അതിനകത്ത് ആ ഒരു തേർഡ് കാസിൽ ക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്യാനായിട്ട് ദേ ക്രിയേറ്റഡ് ദ സ്റ്റോൺസ് ഓഫ് ദാറ്റ് കാസിൽ by having photographs taken of actual stones from a celebrated castle. വേറൊരു വലിയ ഒരു പേരുകേട്ടൊരു കാസിലിൻ്റെ ഫോട്ടോഗ്രാഫ്സ്, അതിൻ്റെ സ്റ്റോൺസിൻ്റെ ഫോട്ടോഗ്രാഫ്സ് എടുത്തിട്ട് പിന്നെ അതിനെ സ്റ്റിറോഫോം ബ്ലോക്സായിട്ട് പെയിൻറ്റ് ചെയ്ത്, അതായത് ഇത് കണ്ടാൽ തിരിച്ചറിയില്ല യഥാർത്ഥ സ്റ്റോണാണോ എന്താണ് ക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്തതാണോ എന്ന് തിരിച്ചറിയാത്ത വിധം അത്രയും പെർഫെക്ഷനോട് കൂടിയാണ് അത് റീക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്ത് ആ കാസിലിൻ്റെ വോളായിട്ട് അത് ക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്ത്. അങ്ങനെ കുറസോവയുടെ ആ ഒരു മറ്റ് പല എന്താണ് ഇദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ ക്രൂ മെമ്പേഴ്സും കൂടെ വർക്ക് ചെയ്തിട്ടുള്ളവരും എല്ലാം പറയുന്ന ആ ഒരു അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ ആ ഒരു ഡെഡിക്കേഷൻ ടു ദി ആർട്ട് ദാറ്റ് വാസ് കമെൻഡബിൾ. Now, while talking about Kurosawa, it is equally important to know his creative team because throughout his career, Kurosawa worked constantly with people drawn from the same pool of creative technicians, crew members, and actors, and they were popularly known as the Kurosawa Group or Kurosawa Gumi. So, now, the first among them is Ichiro Minawa, Ichiro, Ichiro Minawa, Minawa, and he was the sound effects engineer in 22 Kurosawa films. Then the next important person is Takashi Shimura, Takashi, Takashi Shimura, Shimura, and he was an actor in 21 films of Kurosawa. And Shimura seems to be a very familiar face for passionate Kurosawa fans. And Shimura made his first appearance for Kurosawa in his first film, The Sanshiro Sugada, and went on to appear in all the other films except some 5 or 6 films. Otherwise, in all the films you find this character this actor Takashi Shimura. For example, he played the role of the woodcutter in Rashomon. He also doesn't have a role in Ran. Okay, so then the other important persons are Yoshiro Muraki. He was the production designer in 19 of his films. And then you have his assistant director, Teruyo Nogami, Teruyo, Teruyo Nogami. She was his assistant in 19 films, and that was the only woman on the list. And she was also his script assistant on Rashomon. And Nogami is also the woman behind some of the most important posthumous documents describing Kurosawa and his working methods. And her book, she has published a book named Waiting on the Weather, and it recollects her experiences working with Kurosawa. Then we have a very important person, Takao Saito, Takao, Takao Saito, Saito, Saito. He was the cinematographer in 18 of his films. See, when we often talk about the Kurosawa's camera, we think that the director was in full control of the view of the camera, but things are not always like that. The director of photography is, of course, the cameraman. And throughout his career, Kurosawa had worked with a number of talented cinematographers, but nobody as frequently as the veteran cameraman Takao Saito. And Saito perhaps is the man who is the most responsible for the Kurosawa's camera. And then there was Toshiro Mifune, the actor who acted in more than 15 films of Kurosawa. He was Japan's most famous actor as well. And Mifune and Kurosawa were almost inseparable for a period of roughly 20 years. And their friendship was considered as among the greatest actor director pairings in the history of cinema. So this was the magic team with which he created all those masterpieces. Of course, there are many other persons also in the list, but these are the most significant ones. And then I have also included a selected filmography of some of the major films of Kurosawa, which include his first film, Sanshiro Sugada, also called the Judo Saga. It was released in 1943. Then we have the Stray Dog, which was published in 19, I mean, sorry, not published, released in 1949. It was a crime drama, and uh, it was included in the post-war films category because it explores the mood of Japan during its painful post-war recovery. And it can also be classed as a detective film. Then came the Rashomon in 1950, and the film is well known for its plot device, which includes multiple narratives. And it was the first Japanese film to receive a significant international reception. It won the um, Academy Award, and it's considered as one of the greatest films ever made. And there was a phrase called the Rashomon effect, which was derived from this film, and it means the notorious unreliability of eyewitnesses. That means if an incident happens, and if there are many witnesses, each one of them can have his own version of that reality, and that is called the Rashomon effect. And it is based on this film, Kurosawa's Rashomon, in which a murder is described in four contradictory ways by four witnesses. And then another very important work is Ikiru. It stars Takashi Shimura, and it was translated as "to live." And it is regarded by critics as one of the finest works in the history of cinema because it concerns the life of a petty government official, and he comes to know that he has only half a year, that means 6 months of life left, because he will soon die from cancer. And so he searches for solace in the affection of his family, but he is betrayed. He finds that his family won't support him, and then he seeks enjoyment uh, and in the very simple things in life. And in this film, we see that Kurosawa depicts in an extremely realistic manner the collapse of the family system, as well as the hypocritical aspects of society, of officials, etc. And the picture gives an outstanding document of life and the spiritual situation of a person, and what are the things that value the most to a person. See, we think that there are many superficial things. We think that it is money, we think that it is material possessions, house, car, everything, even family, everything. But beyond that, there is something called that inner happiness. There are very little simple things, like when you your close friends, some the you an act of kindness, all these can bring you that inner happiness. So it is a beautiful film that focuses on a man's search for inner happiness towards the end of his life, when he realizes that he has not much life left. It is then that he realizes whatever things he valued, that was of no value, but there are other things that add value and moral to your life. It's a beautiful film. Ikaro is a beautiful film. And then we have The Seven Samurai. It was released in 1954 and it is a Japanese epic samurai drama film. And it takes place during the 16th century, and it tells the story of a village of farmers that hire seven samurais to combat bandits who attack their crops and everything. It's again a very beautiful film. Then there is The Throne of Blood, another big budget film, which is again an adaptation of Shakespeare's Macbeth. And Macbeth happens in medieval Scotland, but the this film is set in feudal Japan. And Toshiro Mifune played the lead character. Then there is The Hidden Fortress, another film released in 1958, and it tells the story of two peasants. And these peasants uh, escort a man and a woman. And the real identity of this man is that he is a general, and the woman is that she is a princess. So it is an adventure story, like what all boulders they come across and how they resolve them and everything. It's a beautiful film, and in this film also it is Toshiro Mifune who played the role of that general. Then Yojimbo is another Japanese samurai film which was released in 1961, and in that also the lead role was played by Toshiro Mifune. He comes as a samurai, and the film was a huge success. Then High and Low, it was a 1963 film and it was a crime film, a police film, again starring Toshiro Mifune, and it was loosely based on the novel King's Ransom by Ed McBain. Ed McMcBain, Ed McBain. Then comes a Red Beard, that was also a beautiful film, and again starring this Toshiro Mifune, and in that it shows a relationship between a doctor and a new trainee, and the film looks at the problem of social injustice, and you find that existentialism and humanism as the central themes of this film. And this was the last black and white film of Kurosawa. It was a major box office hit in Japan, and very sad to note that this was the last film uh, in which he collaborated with his favorite actor Toshiro Mifune, and after that there was a rift between both of them, and so this is the final collaboration between them after working for 15 films together. Another important film is Kagemusha, which means a shadow warrior, and it was released in 1980, and it tells the story of a low class criminal, and he is taught to impersonate uh, a dying feudal lord, and the film was a huge success. It was even nominated for the Oscar. And then there is Ran, and Ran was released in 1985, and it was an epic action drama film. It was directed, edited, and co-written by Kurosawa, and the plot derives from Shakespeare's King Lear. And this is the last big budget film released by Kurosawa. It was, in fact, the most expensive Japanese film produced during that time. And the film was noted for its powerful images, its use of color, costume designs, and even it uh, won the Academy Award for Best Costume Design. Okay, so these are the some of the important, very significant list of films by Kurosawa. So in our next class, we'll be discussing the film Ran. Okay, thank you.